All right, so get ready, because today we're diving deep into something that I think you've probably heard of, but maybe don't totally get. We're talking about the glycemic index.
Yeah, and it's more than just a diet fad. It's a really cool way to understand just how the foods we eat affect our blood sugar.
I mean, we always hear good carbs versus bad carbs, but the glycemic index, or GI, is a whole different way of looking at how carbs impact us.
That's right. Think of it kind of like a ranking system, 0 to 100. It basically measures how quickly those carbs can raise your blood sugar levels.
So, like, 100 is a total sugar rush going straight up, and 0 means no change at all.
Basically, yeah. But the really interesting part is the GI isn't just about the kind of carb.
Really? So there's more to it.
Oh, yeah, how you cook it, if the food is ripe or not, even what you eat it with. All that can change how it affects your blood sugar.
Hold on. Ripeness matters too. So, like, a green banana is different from a ripe one.
Absolutely. We'll get to some examples later, but first, let's cover the basics, how the GI is actually measured.
Okay, lay it on me.
So they compare a food's blood sugar response to a standard food. Usually it's pure glucose.
So they give you a serving of, let's say, a banana, and then track your blood sugar for a while.
Exactly. And based on how your blood sugar responds, it gets a GI score.
Okay, that makes sense. So how do the scores work?
So foods with a GI of 55 or less are considered low. Then medium is 56 to 69.
And anything 70 or above?
That's high GI.
Got it. But why should we even care about these numbers? Is it just for people with diabetes?
Well, managing blood sugar is super important for those folks, but even for people without diabetes, keeping those levels stable has a ton of benefits.
Okay, now you've got my attention. Like what?
So research says that a low GI diet can be a total game changer for weight management.
No way, really.
Yep. And some studies have even linked it to better cholesterol levels and maybe even helping people with fatty liver disease.
Wow, I had no idea it could do all that. It's way more than just about blood sugar.
It really is. But there's another piece to this whole thing. Glycemic load, or GL. Think of it as like the GI's more advanced cousin.
Oh, okay, interesting. So what's the difference?
It factors in not just the GI of the food, but the portion size too.
So, like, even if you eat a ton of low GI food, it could still spike your blood sugar.
Exactly. GL gives you a way more realistic picture of how that serving will actually hit your blood sugar.
This is where I always get lost, trying to remember everything. I'm curious, how do you think about using the GI in your own life?
Well, it can be a lot to take in. One thing that really helps me is focusing on easy swaps,
Oh, swaps are always good. What kind of swaps?
like choosing quinoa or brown rice instead of white rice,
Hmm.
or lentils instead of potatoes, things like that.
I've actually started using this app, Sugar Notes, to help me make healthier choices.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
And it's honestly been a game changer. The barcode scanner is seriously amazing. I can just scan any food at the store and instantly see all the nutritional info.
So, no more guessing games about whether that granola bar is actually healthy.
Nope. Plus, it has this cool macronutrient calculator.
Nice.
Yeah, it breaks down the protein, fat, and carbs in each serving. I can also track my glucose levels and see any patterns so I can adjust my diet if I need to.
That sounds really helpful.
It totally is. I understand way more about how food affects my body now because of it.
That's fantastic. It's all about finding the tools and strategies that work best for you to make incorporating the GI feel easier.
Totally agree. So we've got the basics of GI and GL down, talked about the benefits of a low GI diet, and even shared some personal tips.
And we're just getting started. Ready to jump into some specific food examples.
Oh yeah, hit me with those surprising GI scores you mentioned before. I'm all ears.
Okay, so let's kick things off with a classic, something most people eat, bread.
Ah, good old bread.
And like you might guess, white bread has a pretty high GI, something like 75.
Yeah, not that surprising.
Yeah.
Is that because it's basically just sugar?
Not pure sugar, but it is super processed and refined. So those carbs break down fast, which makes blood sugar spike quickly.
Makes sense. What about whole wheat bread? Better choice, right?
Absolutely. Whole wheat bread has more fiber and all those good nutrients, so it slows digestion down, so the GI is lower, around 50.
Got it. So sticking with whole grains instead of refined ones is a good strategy.
Definitely.
What about other grains then? Like rice?
So rice is interesting. It's kind of a similar thing. White rice has a high GI, about 73, but brown rice is lower, around 68. It all depends on how much of the grain is still there, after processing.
So less processed wins again. Okay, what about potatoes? Everyone loves potatoes. I have a feeling this won't be good news for my mashed potato addiction.
Well, it really depends on how you make them. Boiled potatoes have a GI of around 78.
Ugh. Yeah, that's pretty high.
It is. But if you let them cool down after cooking, something interesting happens.
Wait, really? What happens? Do they magically turn into low GI superstars?
No magic, but when they cool down, they get more resistant starch, and that lowers the GI. It's kind of like a built-in blood sugar hack.
So leftover mashed potatoes are actually better for you. Wow, mind
In
blown.
a way, yeah. It's wild how even small changes like that can make a difference. But don't forget, portion size is still super important. And hey, let's not forget about sweet potatoes. They're naturally lower GI than white potatoes, around 63.
Interesting. There's so much to think about here. What about other veggies? Are most of them low GI?
Most veggies are a great choice when it comes to GI. Stuff like broccoli, spinach, carrots, tomatoes, they're all low on the scale. But there are some exceptions.
Oh, like what?
Corn and parsnips. They have a higher GI than you might think.
Huh, good to know. Okay, how about fruits? Any surprises there?
We already talked about bananas and how ripe they are changes things.
Right, right.
And watermelon, even though it's a fruit, has a pretty high GI, like 76.
Seriously. Watermelon. I always thought it was a healthy snack.
It is healthy. It's just important to remember that the GI is only one piece of the puzzle. Watermelon is full of vitamins and antioxidants. It's all about balance.
All right, balance.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've covered grains, potatoes, veggies, fruits. What about dairy?
Dairy can be tricky. Milk, for example, has a pretty low GI, like around 37 for skim milk. But then
Plus,
there's ice cream, which has a higher GI, around 51 because of all the sugar and fat.
yeah, that makes sense. What about plant-based milks? Like where do soy milk and rice milk fall on the GI scale?
Soy milk is low, about 34, but rice milk, surprisingly high, 86. That's even higher than white bread.
Wow, I would have never guessed that. That's where a tool like Sugar Notes would be so useful. I'm curious, what do you think about using apps like that to help manage the GI?
I think they can be incredibly helpful. Anything that makes it easier to see what's in your food and make smart choices is a good thing.
Totally agree. It's all about finding the stuff that works for you and makes thinking about the GI easier.
For sure. And don't forget about those simple swaps we talked about and mindful eating. Picking whole grains over refined ones, eating protein and fiber with your carbs, even just watching your portion sizes. These are all little things that can make a huge difference.
Those are really great tips. It makes the GI seem less scary, like something we can actually do every day.
Exactly. It's not about being perfect. It's about making good choices that work for you.
So as we head into the last part of our deep dive, let's take a minute to think about everything we've learned. The GI is a powerful way to understand how the food we eat affects us.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from how the GI is measured to all those surprising food examples.
And I think the most important thing is it's not about restricting yourself. It's about making informed decisions and figuring out what works best for you.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I'm excited to hear your final thoughts and wrap up this awesome deep dive into the glycemic index.
All right, welcome back to the last part of our deep dive on the glycemic index. It's been pretty amazing learning about how different foods can mess with, or I guess, affect our blood sugar.
We've gone over a lot, huh? From like the sciencey stuff behind the GI to all those food examples that really surprised me.
It really makes you think about something we do every single day, eating in a whole new way.
It does. I think one of the big takeaways for me is that the glycemic index isn't about calling foods good or bad.
Totally. It's about getting how they affect us
Mm.
and making choices that, help us reach our goals.
Yeah, exactly. Like what works for one person might not work for another. We all have different needs, different lifestyles, and all that.
And that's where I think tools like that app I mentioned, Sugar Notes, can be so helpful. I've been using it to keep track of what I'm eating, and it's really changed how aware I am of things.
I've heard good things about it.
Hmm.
It's all about finding what works for you, right? Could be an app, a food journal, or even just paying more attention to how different foods make you feel.
So true. This whole deep dive has really opened my eyes to uh, how important it is to pay attention to blood sugar. It's not just for avoiding diabetes. It's about being healthy overall.
Definitely. Even tiny changes, like switching from white rice to brown rice or adding some chicken to your rice bowl, can make a big difference over time.
And those are the kinds of changes anyone can make without feeling like they're, missing out or anything.
Exactly. It's about making choices that you can actually stick with that fit into your life. You don't have to become a GI expert overnight.
Right. So to wrap things up, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about. We've talked about tons of foods and their GI scores, but what are some of your favorite meals? And how could you change them up based on what we've learned today?
That's a great question. It's all about taking this info and using it in your real life. Like maybe you could try lentil pasta instead of regular pasta in your lasagna, or add some grilled chicken or fish to your rice bowl.
Those are perfect examples. Even those little tweaks can have a real impact.
For sure. It's all about being aware and making those choices that help us be healthier and feel better.
Well said. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the glycemic index. We hope you've learned a lot and feel like you can make better choices about the food you eat.
It was great being here.
And to all our awesome listeners, thanks for tuning in to the deep dive. We'll see you next time. Keep learning, keep exploring, and keep those blood sugar levels happy.